Gary is a young man who has been diagnosed with social anxiety. He tells his therapist, Dr. Dill, that he is fascinated with black romantic comedies. He thinks that the film industry has been plagued by white-scented big-budget films. What he wants to see is a great black love movie, which celebrates his culture. Dr. Dill tries to control the conversation without derailing it, and tells Gary that he simply asked him if he spoke to anybody that week. Gary smiles and tells the therapist that he counts as someone, or rather the only one he has spoken to. Dr. Dill does not understand how Gary could be so isolated from people. Gary is 25 years old. He has a good job in his own house. Dr. Dill thinks that Gary could find a nice lady. Even though he is not so good looking, he could find an ugly woman instead of annoying him in his office. The therapist does not get why Gary is having so much trouble socializing. Gary tells his therapist that he is supposed to help him with his anxiety. Dr. Dill thinks Gary should not complain so much because people under 30 do not have any problems. He tells Gary that having anxiety means one thing: he is a virgin. Gary has a problem with crowds, awkward situations, and social interactions. He has not spoken to anybody in 2 weeks, and his online job is also another reason why he is lonely and isolated, especially since he does not understand how grown men can make new friends. He thinks it was much easier at school. Gary believes his therapist is his only friend, but Dr. Dill says that is ridiculous. He finds the idea of a friendship between them absolutely absurd. It is Gary's third session, and he is still waiting for the time Dr. Dill will help him overcome his anxiety. He is making no progress. Dr. Dill tells Gary to have a conversation with the first person he meets because the weekend is coming, and he should find something to do instead of staying in his apartment alone. Gary assumed that his therapist was giving him tough love, but Dr. Dill truly thinks he is wasting his time because he should be more concerned with executing a plan of action instead of complaining all day. Gary tries to speak to the taxi driver, but he panics at first. He finally finds the courage to ask him a question, but he does not choose it carefully. Gary wants to know what kind of inappropriate content the taxi driver is interested in watching. Upon the stranger's silence, Gary explains that he likes anything with toys because it is like Toy Story for grown-ups. The taxi driver is weirded out by that, and although he tries to avoid him, Gary asks him if he wants to get drinks later. The stranger pretends to like Gary and agrees to that. Gary is happy about that and tells the driver that they can also have something to eat so they can get to know one another. Gary is pleased by the interaction and takes the driver's phone number, but he soon understands that the man wants nothing to do with him as he drives off. Gary starts dancing around his house and tries to find ways to pass the time. It looks like Gary is very bored to death and lonely. Hours fly by, and he still has no one to talk to. Gary wakes up the next morning and goes out for a walk. He plays with his yo-yo alone and then laughs at himself for thinking this is a good way to make new friends because that only makes him feel more pathetic. He thinks that only a loser would walk around with a yo-yo in his hand. Gary hears distant crying sounds. Before he approaches the sad girl, his heart starts beating violently, and he becomes anxious all of a sudden. He closes his eyes and calms down. Then he stands close to the girl who refuses to acknowledge his presence. Gary caresses her head to comfort her. The young woman, Alexis, asks him why he is petting her like a dog. He did so because he thought it might make her feel better. Gary introduces himself and asks her why she is crying. Alexis screams at him, telling him she is sad because her boyfriend broke up with her. She was giving her ex-boyfriend everything he wanted all the time. They pretty much did it everywhere. But the problem is that they were never friends, and that is why it did not work out. Alexis thinks that the basis of a successful love story is friendship, and if it is not there, it is doomed to end horribly. Alexis looks around her, wondering how the park is empty of people. She asks Gary if he wants to grab something to eat, but he is surprised because she was crying just seconds ago, and now, she looks fine. Then, Alexis remembers something important all of a sudden and runs off, leaving Gary behind, not understanding what exactly happened. Gary spends his time watching TV, lip-syncing to his favorite songs, and dancing. He tells Dr. Dill about his encounter with Alexis. Gary thinks she is weird because she kept changing the subjects too many times. The therapist thinks they have a lot in common, especially because they are both weird. He acknowledges the fact that Gary is making progress because he is out there more speaking to people. Gary is determined to overcome his anxiety without taking any pills. Although Gary thinks the possibilities of meeting Alexis again are slim to none, when he walks out of his therapy session, he finds her outside. He loses his confidence and decides to walk away, but Alexis sees him and runs to him. She touches his face, and as he asks her about her name, she jumps from subject to subject, unable to control herself. Gary claps his hands so she can focus. Gary grabs her face as well. She gives him her name and asks if he is hungry. While Alexis is comfortable speaking to Gary, he can't seem to control his wild heartbeats. She tells him that talking to him makes her feel better, not like therapy, which is for crazy people. Then, she turns around to scream at the waiter to serve her martini. This seems to drive Gary's anxiety wild. He tells Alexis he has social anxiety. Alexis does not know it is a thing and asks if he takes medication. She takes his hands and tells him to breathe, and that seems to work. Alexis tells Gary she is too impatient to wait for her drink, so she drags Gary out of the restaurant, after making a scene. Alexis can't believe that Gary is able to go on without speaking to people because she could not survive an entire day without talking. Alexis does not care about what others think. She tells Gary that he should not be concerned by others' opinions because they are not fit to judge him. She then starts screaming at a random woman on the other side of the street, just to prove she does not care how the world perceives her. She curses at her, and they run away after Gary profusely apologizes to the poor woman. Alexis wonders how Gary can spend his life like that. She does not understand how he is alone in a city where he knows nobody. Gary tells her there is someone he used to know. It is his girlfriend from high school. When she was accepted to a college in a different city, he never got in touch with her. Her name is Kayla, and she is the only person he has ever been around where he felt no anxiety. Alexis thinks Gary should find her. Once again, she looks at her watch, remembering something, and then she starts running off. Gary goes home and thinks about everything that happened. He finally grabs his laptop and searches for Kayla on the internet in hopes of finding her. The next day, someone keeps knocking on his door. He finds out that it is Alexis, who somehow figured out where he resides. She wants to help him find Kayla. She did so much research last night on Kayla, and she found her best friend's Facebook account. She is a fitness instructor who holds classes in the park, and Alexis thinks she can help them find Kayla. Gary and Alexis find Kayla's friend Tracy, who is an angry fitness instructor from hell. Alexis calms Gary down and tells him she will do all the talking. Tracy keeps commenting on Gary's weight, but Alexis tells her the reason why they came to her. Tracy has not seen Kayla for 4 months, but she recognizes Gary's name because she knew her friend dated a boy with the same name in high school. Gary tells her he is the one, but Tracy starts giggling because she did not expect him to be this ugly. Tracy tells them that Kayla disappeared, but she seems to get along quite well with Alexis because they have a lot of things in common. Gary is left out, but he insists that Tracy gives him Kayla's parents' address. Gary and Alexis find Kayla's parents. Alexis is surprised to see that Gary is not experiencing any anxiety this time. He thinks they are family. Kayla's mother comes out, jumping up and down in excitement, and hugs Gary tightly. It has been 5 years since they last met, but one thing is clear: they are too comfortable speaking about intimate topics in front of Alexis, who has trouble believing Kayla's mother is talking about the same Gary she knows. Kayla's sister Jasmine is all grown up. She sits close to Gary and starts touching him to get his attention. Alexis and Jasmine do not get along, and they almost throw hands at each other because Alexis made fun of her lisp. Gary learns that Kayla's father passed away 4 months ago. Kayla was so close to her father, and losing him made her distance herself from everyone. So, now Gary understands why Kayla distanced herself from everybody, including her family. Alexis manages to get information about where Kayla might be with Jasmine's help. Alexis takes Gary outside and tells him they should go. He puts her hands on his arms and starts caressing his shoulders, while she is deep in thought. Gary finds her actions weird, but when she remembers what they need to do, she decides to explain to him the plan on the way there. Alexis and Gary find Rochelle. They expect that she knows about Kayla's whereabouts, but she tells them Kayla quit dance lessons a month ago. Kayla needed to find herself and to not be bothered by anybody. She kept changing her phone number. Rochelle thinks they should ask Okui, Kayla's boyfriend, if he has some news. Gary is shocked that Kayla has a boyfriend, but Rochelle tells him that it is a natural thing since Kayla is not ugly like him. A woman like her can't stay without a boyfriend. Rochelle gives Gary Okui's number. He hesitates to call him first, but Alexis encourages him to give it a go. Gary tells Alexis that something bad happened between him and Kayla in the past, and he does not know if they could get past it. Alexis tells Gary that time heals all wounds, and that he should follow his heart. Then, typical Alexis, she runs off again. Gary tells his therapist that he is not sure calling Okui is a good decision. Dr. Dill gives him some tough love again, which is pure bullying. But then he asks Gary about Alexis. Gary thinks she is so confident, and she does not overthink things like he does. She is aggressive, but also easy to talk to. Alexis is funny and amazing. Dr. Dill hears this and teases Gary for liking her. The therapist thinks Gary should stop looking for Kayla and focus on Alexis instead. Gary is not sure she would be interested in him, but he admits she is pretty. At that moment, Dr. Dill realizes something, and before he says it, Alexis barges inside his office. Dr. Dill calls Alexis his sister. Gary watches her as she hugs him and calls him brother. Realizing what this means now, Gary assures Dr. Dill that he and Alexis are just friends. Gary tells him he should be happy that he made a friend, but Alexis in the back listens to this disappointedly. She gives them a minute to continue with the therapy session. Dr. Dill moves closer to Gary and puts his arm on his shoulder. He tells Gary to keep it simple between him and Alexis because his sister gets easily attached. Dr. Dill threatens Gary and tells him if he ever sees his sister crying because of him, he will skin him alive. Gary runs out of the office after hearing the horrible things Dr. Dill might do to him. He finds Alexis outside waiting for him. Alexis slaps Gary after he apologizes for what he said in there. Alexis realizes that Gary has not made the phone call yet, so she decides to do it. Okui knows where Kayla is, but he refuses to tell anybody. Alexis threatens Okui, and he agrees to meet her and Gary. Alexis tells Gary that she told Okui to meet them at an abandoned hospital because he could be dangerous. Gary stares at her, trying to understand her logic. Alexis does not want any witnesses around if she needs to kill him. Okui shows up, but does not cooperate easily. Gary experiences a terrible anxiety attack, and once again, Alexis helps him through it. Alexis always knows what to do and it comes naturally to her. Okui asks Gary if he is the one Kayla always used to compare him to, the Gary who treated Kayla like a princess. Okui, just like Tracy, thought Gary would be much more good-looking. Okui broke up with Kayla 2 weeks ago because he did not like her body. He told Kayla to get implants but she did not want to. Aggravated by what she heard, Alexis jumps at Okui and starts fighting him. Alexis beats him up, and then asks Gary to join her. All of a sudden, Tracy shows up as well and starts kicking Okui. The three of them run away after jumping Okui. Tracy tells them a friend of hers saw Kayla's name on a sign-up sheet for a TV competition. They decided to sign up as well the next day to see Kayla. For the first time, Gary goes out for a morning run. It is not because Tracy has been bullying him for being fat, but because he wants to feel better about himself. He receives a call from Alexis, who invites him to swim with her. Gary and Alexis sit by the pool. Alexis wants to know why he refuses to take medication. Gary does not believe that is a solution because people are so quick to take them without knowing what they contain. Gary wants to conquer it alone, even though meds would be an easier option. Alexis tells him he might be right because when she used to take them, she could not recognize herself. Gary watches Alexis walking away in her bikini and smiles, realizing something. Gary and Alexis sign up for the competition. They find Tracy there as well, who wants her $200 from Kayla. Tracy tells Alexis she knows she likes Gary and does not understand how she could be helping him find his ex-girlfriend when she could reveal her feelings for him. Alexis wants Gary to get closure. Gary asks Alexis if she is still thinking about her ex-boyfriend. He wants to know if she might get back together with him. Alexis is mad that Gary brought up such a question and leaves. Gary follows her around the city, trying to make her feel better. They have an hour to kill before the competition, so they dance together wherever they go. It is now clear that they both like each other, but are fighting it. Finally, Alexis makes the first move, but Gary avoids it and tells her they have to go. Gary looks around him and wonders why Kayla is late. Gary's anxiety becomes the longer he waits, and Alexis assures him he will be fine. Gary thinks Alexis always knows what to say, and she does not seem as distracted as she used to when they first met. Kayla did not show up in the end. Tracy, who showed up unexpectedly to the competition, wins it and gets herself a contract for a show. Gary asks for Alexis's help, but she tells him she does not want to find her anymore. Gary starts screaming at Alexis. He wants to know why she gave up already, but Alexis's patience has run out. They both say hurtful things to one another, but Gary feels bad and follows Alexis to find out that she goes to addiction group meetings. Alexis reveals she was an alcoholic. When she stopped taking her medication, she relied on drinking to relax. It is the reason why her boyfriend broke up with her because he did not like her sober. Gary tells her that one of the reasons why he likes her is because she is honest. He wished she had told him this. Alexis smiles, telling him she likes him as well. Gary and Alexis finally kiss. They take their passion to the bedroom, where they are finally able to be fully vulnerable. Gary practices the lines he is about to tell Dr. Dill. He finally decides to wing it. He pushes the door of the office open, and before he speaks a word, Dr. Dill picks up his gun and tells Gary that he should not have messed with a crazy guy like him. The more surprising thing is that Gary finds Kayla inside. Kayla is happy to see him. Dr. Dill is even more so when he realizes that Gary managed to get a girl as beautiful as Kayla before. It turns out Kayla ended up getting implants even after her relationship ended with Okui. Dr. Dill assumes that Gary will stop messing around with his sister now that Kayla is found. The therapist starts making dirty jokes before he finally leaves them alone. Kayla takes Gary's hands and asks him why he has been looking for her. Gary wants to know where she has been. Kayla has been depressed after her father died and she eliminated everyone around her to focus on herself. Kayla tells Gary that Dr. Dill helped her a lot, which he finds difficult to believe. Kayla thinks Gary might be exactly what she needed, but Gary tells her he still can't get over the fact that she stole $5,000 from him. It is the money he worked hard for to pay for his school tuition. Kayla took the money and ran to Atlanta. Kayla tells him she needed it because she had to pay for her father's heart surgery. Gary feels bad when Kayla starts crying. Gary would have given Kayla the money if she had asked. Although he finds it difficult to forgive her, he tells her that he can try because the money went to good use. As Kayla starts kissing him, Gary experiences his first anxiety attack around her, something that never happened before. Alexis visits Gary's house after he has been avoiding her calls. She goes inside and kisses him because she misses him a lot. Gary feels guilty when Kayla suddenly comes out of the bedroom with his shirt on. Alexis tries to leave Gary's apartment, but she can't leave without confessing how she feels. Alexis can't pretend like what they have is not real anymore. She feels normal when she is with Gary, and she never felt that way with anybody before. Alexis needs Gary, and she knows he feels that way around her. He just needs to face the truth. Gary tells Alexis that their mission is now complete. He wants to stay with Kayla. Alexis leaves with a broken heart. Gary walks around the city, remembering the things he and Alexis went through, all the happy times they lived together. Even when Kayla is now in his life, she cannot replace Alexis. Gary goes back home and finds Kayla hiding another secret. He learns that Kayla has been an addict since junior year, and all the things she said about her father's surgery were all lies. Kayla has a history of addiction in her family, and she used Gary's money to pay her dealer. When she moved to Atlanta, she became clean, until 4 months ago when she started using again when her father overdosed. Kayla wants to stop, but she finds it difficult, almost impossible. Gary tells Kayla that her problem is serious and wishes she could get the help she needs. He can't be the one to pick her up, and he has made a wrong decision choosing her over Alexis. Kayla tells Gary to go and get Alexis because she deserves him. As expected, Dr. Dill is not happy about the way Gary treated his sister. He comes out with a big weapon and threatens Gary to blow him to pieces. Alexis stops her brother from making a mistake and asks Gary what brings him to her house. Gary asks her to sit, while Dr. Dill keeps watch behind them, working on his skills. Gary Googled Alexis to get her address. He tells her that she is the only person he has had multiple conversations with in the city, besides her brother. Gary was unsure about the reason why he developed feelings for her. He thought they might be an outcome of his loneliness, but now he knows they are genuine because Alexis makes him feel confident, invincible, and protected. He was scared because he has only known Alexis for 2 weeks, and in that short amount of time, Alexis has changed his life for the better. She makes him a better man. Unlike Kayla, Gary can always trust Alexis to tell him the truth and to help see the good side of life. Gary tells her that just like she predicted, beautiful love stories are stronger when they start with a friendship. Gary wants to win back her heart, but Alexis thinks it should not be easy for him. Gary broke her heart, so she thinks he needs to prove himself worthy of her. So Alexis calls for her brother, the crazy Dr. Dill, who is more than happy to shoot Gary. Alexis just wants her brother to watch something. She tells Gary to kiss her. Gary thinks he heard wrong, but Alexis repeats her demand. Dr. Dill is ready to kill Gary if he goes near his sister. Alexis again tells Gary to kiss her in front of her brother, who is clearly armed with another gun. Alexis waits for Gary to be brave for her, but he has trouble breathing as his anxiety rises again. Dr. Dill asks Alexis what is wrong with Gary, and she tells him that it is his anxiety. He is supposed to know that since he is a therapist, but he tells Gary that he is not a doctor. His first name is Doctor. With a U, he thinks Gary is stupid for not paying attention. Alexis tells Gary to focus and believes that he will be able to fight for her. She helps him gather his courage again, and he successfully kisses her, not caring that Alexis's crazy brother is watching him with 2 guns in hand.
We got time, honey, to make this whatever we want. See the days running, stretching out just for us.
I like you.
Fill them all with our dreams. Mine is gonna bring
need you.